Okay, Carl, that's fine.
Right. Okay. I'm looking very sensible. I'm looking. My hair is well presented. Don't
And
say
that's
anything, Andy. At least I got hair. And we're going to start.
Ooh,
Oh,
ooh.
shocking.
If Pete was here, whew.
oh,
Oh yeah, I did speak to
see,
Pete.
that's
I
the
did
cutting
speak to
that
Pete.
is.
Roger, shut up. I did speak to Pete a couple of days ago. He's okay. He's still not
Good.
too with it. And I think what it. To be honest with you, with Pete, I think is a matter of he's feeling uncomfortable at this minute, and I think
Mm.
we can understand that. In you know,
Yeah, send him our love.
I did send him your love, but not Roger's.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah.
Well, I phoned him up the other week.
Oh, good. Well done.
Yeah, Rog. Nobody cares. Right. Okay. So when we mention Stonehenge, right, we're going to be doing Stonehenge at the end, right?
Okay.
And there's one thing I'm going to say about Stonehenge, which is just so obvious that nobody's picked it up at all, right? Then again, you probably already realised what I'm going to say. Not yeah. And then I'm going to mention we're going to start off with the Nessa Brodgar, and we're going to look the other bit of the thing, the big thing is looking at some analysis of hill forts and how hill forts as a phenomenon take us in different directions, which is what I talk about a lot, right? So that's what we're doing. So Margaret, without further ado, right, just confuse us.
I've got nothing really. Just about druids.
Oh, let's have druids then. Let's have just something sensible like druids. It's fine. Just chuck it at us.
It was just something that I read about. That the one person that would know for certain whether there were druids was Julius Caesar, because he was rampaging through Germany, France, Belgium, all of those places.
Can I stop you? Can I just stop you? Stop you,
Yeah.
right? My thing is not about druids in Europe, right? It's not where I've got no argument with that, and I've got no argument with the word Celts in Europe and all the rest of it, right? But then it's that druid thing in Britain. So run on from what I've just said. Right, go.
Well, he was just he I didn't know he'd actually written about the druids in his memoirs or whatever. And he said they were very intelligent, very clever, very brave. He really bigged them up as being quite something. And they say that's probably because he wanted people to think he was fighting against a very impressive foe, and he beat them despite them being so amazing.
I say that about Andy every week, but I don't make a fuss about it. Do you know what I mean? There's just no issue, really, is there? You know, when you come to it.
No.
Thanks for that, Andy. Right. Anything
Got it
else
in
you
your
want to say?
favour.
Yeah.
So the Romans did things to get things home when they marched back to Rome, didn't they? And things. Actually, if they had a big fight and they were triumphant over a terrible enemy, when they got back to Rome, they could march in and triumph. And I think they were given various accolades or something to sort of congratulate them.
Well, yeah, that's exactly the point when we look at Caligula, right? And we think about the possible invasion that Caligula may have actually successfully led over to Britain, right? Before Claudius came to be an emperor, roughly about 39 AD, right? And the point with all of this is that other than the writings of Julius Caesar and the writings of Tacitus involving Claudius, right, we've got very little archaeological evidence to say that either the Claudius or the Julius Caesar invasions ever took place, right? So there's no reason to say that a Caligula invasion didn't take place. But because Caligula was extremely unpopular, right, he was written out of history. And this bears on something that we said last week as well. Do we believe everything that historians write about the past? We're in very dangerous territory when we believe everything. You can come back at me and say, oh, well, we believe everything that the Bible says. Then again, we don't. Right. So it's the archaeology is very important. It's vital to understanding these events. But we're very limited with the archaeology that we're actually excavating. So, right, actually, over to you next, Roger, and then we'll have a quick chat with David and Andy.
No, nothing
Anything
from you, Carl?
Anything from you, Dave?
No, sorry.
We were actually talking about you, David, when you left last week. Something that you were really interested in, and I can't remember what it was. I can remember. Oh, I thought David would love to hear this, and I thought, right, I can't remember what it was, but you were mentioned passionately last week, David, so I thought I'd mention that. Don't let it go to your head. Right, Drina.
An archaeology student in Denmark has found 6 silver bracelets. And they think it's hack silver. I don't know whether it's a recent find, but it's a recent report.
So this is to do with the Vikings, yeah. So that's going to be bits and bobs. That's definitely going to be Viking period, isn't it? So yeah.
Hack silver, isn't it?
Hack silver, which is basically a specific Viking trade, silver items.
Oh, right.
Scrap.
Yeah.
Scrap. Oh.
I think it's suggested it's used like money.
Yeah.
Ah, right.
They're often cut into similar size pieces, which would suggest kind of like a weight thing and used as a currency. But yeah, I mean, if you're going to barter something, you know, you're not going to just give them the whole thing, are you? So
no.
This is something when the great Viking army was defeating Alfred the Great. It was that the tribute was going to be hack silver, but it wasn't going to be like, let's have 100 pennies. It was going to be specifically that. Oh, and actually one thing, I don't know if anyone actually follows me on YouTube. I've actually doing a weights and measures series on YouTube every single day, where I do a 30 seconds looking at what the word barrel means and what the word bag means and what the word it's the Eigendale measure. Well, and I'm just doing one of these every week. So if anyone's interested, go on YouTube. It's on my channel. And yeah, we might actually do that. Right. Okay, then quickly, anything from you, Andy?
No, nothing to add. Thanks.
And then the lady of the moment, not you, Margaret, Anne.
I've done nothing. And I do apologise about last week. I was so tired. I was in bed by 8 o'clock, so I didn't make it.
You're allowed.
You didn't wait up for me then. Right, okay. Right. So I just got to mention that because I screwed up last time, and you know what? It comes around so fast. So your money's the next 2 months.
No.
Are due. Yeah. The thing is, this is so weird, right? It's almost as if it was last month, right?
No.
But it's. I can remember last time. I can remember thinking, right, it got to the beginning of June, and I thought, oh my God, I haven't told anyone, right? So I thought, right, okay, I'm going to get it in early this time. I'm going to say, right, your money, your £50, the money's due for the next 2 months, right? If you pay it now, then if you pay it tomorrow, then it means that. Hang on, this is a plan, right? I'm just chucking this in there. It's not, you know. It's the.
It is. It's only the 20th.
I'm winding you up. What I'm trying to say is, right, your monies are due, right? Make sure it's in by the 1st of September. Job done. Thank you. I made a cock up of that. Right. Anyway. Yeah. So now you know. Job done. Right. So what we're gonna do? It puts a smile on Drina's face, even though I've bumped into Idris. Right. No, I didn't. Or David Tennant. But anyway, let's just move on. I'm not going to mention anyone else. Elizabeth Coleman. Right. So right. I'm terrible. I really am. Right. Okay. Oh, it was very odd bumping into Elizabeth. It was just like, yeah, she's so normal. Right. Okay, then. What have I just done now? What have you got on your screen?
Nothing.
Oh, right. Okay. If I share, right? Oh, yeah. No, what do you mean nothing? That makes me feel wonderful.
No, it was just a black.
It was nothing.
Oh.
Roger, shut up.
Oh,
You know
dear.
what? I am absolutely so disappointed that Roger's not going to do the stage show with me. It'd just be so good. Right, okay then. So what one thing about this Stonehenge find, right? Oh, Roger's not going to do the Stonehenge thing, is he? But anyway, what I've managed to do, I actually thought, right, I've no idea where the altar stone is at Stonehenge. Anyway, there it is. But anyway, we're going to do that at the end, right? And it's something specific I want to say. I'm going to read through an article in the from the newspaper at the end, and I'm going to say blah blah blah. This is what I think, and it's just like a no-boner, right? So what we are gonna mention is this: that the Nessa Brodgar excavations are basically in the next few days are going to be over. So the last week, which is this week, they've got no members of the public along. They got no photography, no nothing, right? And it's basically just trying to end the excavation, which has been going on since 2024. 2024 is that now? Since 2004, right? And I just wanted to mention this. And also, the Elysig pillar is done and dusted. So that'll be going out soon, and we'll be sending out a leaflet about the live shows. If anyone's interested in that, there's a little thing that you can send back in the post. And also, it does mention about an archaeological excavation that we'll be undertaking, right? That people only know about it. Well, basically, the details are on that. So that's coming out soon. Right, anyway, Nessa Brodgar. So the Nessa Brodgar Neolithic site to be covered over as Orkney excavation ends. And I would actually say that if you go there in January, it's covered up anyway with tarpaulin and tyres. But what's going to happen is there's going to be a membrane placed over it, and the soil's going to go back on over the site, right? And it's going to be covered up for until when, right? And maybe when I'm retired and which I'm never going to retire, but maybe when I get a bit to whatever, and me and Michelle can sort of go out there, and they might actually be doing the excavation in 20 years' time. I don't know. But the excavation as it is now is finished. It is closing. It sounds like the cruelest of tasks spend 20 years digging in the dirt of a narrow, wind-battered strip of land between two lochs, then go and fill it all in again. And that's exactly what they're doing. That's what they're doing. And it may seem odd and strange, but in archaeology, we've usually got three choices, right? The archaeology is going to be destroyed by a developer. The archaeology is going to be left open to be displayed to members of the public for generations, and they'll be able to see it. Or the excavations are covered up, and that's what's happening. It's being covered up. This is exactly what's happening at the Nessa Brodgar, one of the most important Neolithic sites in the British Isles, and we will be doing a session about this excavation, but it's not today because I want to get all the stuff out. I want to see what there is that they've discovered. Weirdly enough, last year it seemed that there was constant news about the Nessa Brodgar. There'd be something every single week, and I haven't seen that this time. I've been aware of the excavations, but I haven't sort of, last year it was like, it'd be in the news. They'd be found some carved stones in the Nessa Brodgar, or they found a new building, or they found this and that. There's not been that news this time, which I think there's a reason for that. After 2 decades of patient, diligent excavation and study, the people who have been uncovering the site's mysteries are having to cover it all up in the name of conservation. The only way to save what they call the Ness is to hide it from view, right? And there's the archaeologist Nick Card. Bill had a run-in with Nick Card. Roger, he had a row with him, but that's something else. Anyway, Nick Card, and there he is. It's all down to him. It's basically on farmland that his family has farmed for ages, and he's actually the head of Orcadian archaeology, the Orcadian archaeological department, and he actually lectures at University of Highlands and Islands at Orkney. He's an archaeologist, but he's also a farmer. Who else is an archaeologist and a farmer and an actor? I don't know, but he's not an actor. He does presenting stuff. So the nest lies just southeast of the Ring of Brodgar, very famous site, and obviously north of Stennes. Since 2004, excavations at the 3-hectare site have so far uncovered 40 structures and a mega statue of Lloyd George, a cluster of buildings which suggest that this was an important settlement in prehistoric Orkney. They were built in waves between roughly 3,500 and 2,400 years BC, or in other words, 5,500 and 4,400 years ago. Well, give or take a few years. But the thing is with this is that it's without parallel in Atlantic Europe. It's described as one of the most important archaeological excavations in the world ever. And actually, for prehistory, yes, I would completely agree. A find that has challenged and changed and altered our understanding about the culture and beliefs of Neolithic Orkney by a long, long way. Well, by Neolithic British standards, one shining a new light on the prehistory of Northern Europe. So about 70 people work there throughout the summer excavations. The summer excavations have been about 9 weeks altogether, so just over two months. And basically it's a mix of volunteers, archaeological students, and established professional researchers. The archaeologist Nick Card, a chair of the Brodgar Trust, he says the end of the excavation is a very difficult time. It has been very emotional. It's been a very emotional year for him, and for many reasons, not least because the archaeology has become part of his life and so many other people's lives. It's basically, you know, as an archaeologist myself personally, if you're planning an archaeological excavation, there's a lot of work that leads up to it, the excavation. Then you do the excavation, there's a lot of work after the excavation. We become connected to it. And I tell you what, right? I understand what Nick Card is saying, because being an archaeologist in control of an archaeological excavation like that is one of the loneliest things on the planet, right? Lots of us archaeologists feel isolated because it's up to us. It's all the pressure is on us. It's like being the chief executive of a big company, right? Well, not on a big salary, but you know what I'm trying to say. It's like being the person who's responsible. So he has to stop the excavations because this guy's not going to live forever, right? It could take him 20 years, week in, week out, to look at all the information, all the photographs, all the plans, all the artifacts, all the radiocarbon dates, all the geophys, everything. It could take him 20 years, right? And this guy's not getting any younger. It could take him until he's 80 to publish the report because there's so much to do. So if he didn't finish now, he may never get the report published. So I understand why he's doing it. And he says himself, it will take us years to follow up and write up what we have found, but it's an emotional because the Nest team has been built up every summer for the past 10, 20 years, and it's become his extended family, definitely, because he sees those same people year in, year out. The problem for the team is the effect that the exposure to the elements has had on the stones and the structure. The problem is it's sandstone, right? It's a very poor sandstone. It's a good building material, but when you leave it exposed, it's very poor. Unlike the hard beat stones used at the nearby Neolithic village of Skara Brae, the stones used to build the nest site have been specifically quarried nearby, the fresh quarried stone where they're quarried 5,000 years ago. At least this then leaves them in later generations prone to erosion, and they would begin to disintegrate if left out in the open. It's been suggested to Nick Card that what they did, they enclosed the site in some kind of a dome, but this was completely out of the question. And the reason why, the materials that they would need to use to build such a dome and the effect on the World Heritage, UNESCO Heritage Site would be huge. The structural cost would be astronomical. Even if we had the money, where where would they put the foundations? If they put the foundations into the ground, they'd have to go on the other archaeology. And the whole of the peninsula is one big archaeological site, so there is nowhere to put the foundations. So you can imagine the winds there can get up to 60 miles per hour on a regular basis, right? And it's just like, you know, it would be really difficult. It would be a nice idea if we were in China. They would put the whole thing under a huge dome, but unfortunately Britain doesn't have the money that the Chinese have to protect their archaeology, so it's out of the question. The team will begin now this week, filling in the trenches and build buildings from the spoil heaps. The piles of soil removed over the past 20 years in a very considered way. This work will be completed before the end of this week, actually. So basically, they're still photographing and they're still recording things, and they're still taking photographs, and this is part of the UNESCO World Heritage landscape. And I tell you what, they've actually got their own police. The UNESCO World Heritage actually they've got their own police force, because when we pulled up there, it was well, actually, when I was last at the site, I was with you imagine, Roger, it was Bill, Peter, me, Michelle, Kathy, and it was just like we got out the car and we went over to look at the site as it covered up, and the next thing I was collared by a UNESCO World Heritage police officer, and it was like, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Look, I'm University of Highlands and Islands archaeologist, because I'm doing a master's degree there," and they were okay with me. But this site gets top class protection. It's been protected since 1999. So these remains, this site itself is this site where they're finding that's where we're going to do next, where they find artifacts like this, buildings like this. The archaeology there is the top of the iceberg of the archaeology, and what you're seeing there is the results of what you can see. There might be another 3 or 4 meters of archaeology underneath this that go all the way back through to the Mesolithic period, right? So it's not just a site that we see over a time span of 1,200 years from 5,400 years ago, or whatever. It's a site that is being developed over a considerable length of time, and we'll never get all the answers. Finding this site has definitely changed our perspective, and now we can never underestimate our Neolithic ancestors and what they were capable of. I tell you what, I could have written this article because I'm putting a lot into it as well. So the Ness itself is a massively popular tourist attraction, and in fact, the excavations have dragged in 20,000 tourists alone just to the site over 9 weeks. And there is actually another reason why the excavations have to close, right, is because of 20,000 people is a lot of footfall, right? And that footfall is going to go to the Ring of Brodgar, which is north from this, and basically a mile up there and a mile over there. There's the Ring of Stenes. But having 20,000 tourists at one time in this area, right, means that it's damaging the other archaeology. So by people wanting to see this, they're going to see the other archaeology. So it's damaging the archaeology. I don't know if any of you know, I don't say much about this, but I actually did a landscape archaeology course with Leicester University years ago. And it was one thing that I was specifically trained to talk about, that, archaeology, when you've got archaeology, you've got to spread people out to visit different archaeological sites to stop it being damaged, right? And I can see in lots of ways this has to be done. Thousands of people, including local folk, have been able to watch Orcadian history uncovered in real time, and the team at the Ness have provided absolute first-class experience over the years. We're all sad the excavation's coming to an end. It has been a huge benefit to tourism locally and has encouraged people from all over the world to visit our islands. But again, there's that footfall thing that I've mentioned, which is usually missing from these pieces. We still have many other incredible archaeological sites and annual excavations to see. So visitors will always have the chance to take a trip back in time during a holiday in Orkney. And basic, I'm going to say something about that. If anyone ever wants to go to Orkney and they want to know of where the excavations are taking place, contact me, right? And I will let you know, because I usually know. I can just phone the university and say, oh, you know, where's Martin working, or where's Ingrid working, or where's anyone else working, and I can tell you whether there's an excavation open. But I always say, if you're going to go to Orkney in March and April, because there's very few people on the island. The weather's crap, but you get to see places and the people are really chilled out, right? If you go in June and July, then there's a lot more tourists. But July is the time that the excavations are taking place, because that's when the university is closed down and the lecturers are out excavating places. So there you go. So they're ending the excavation. It's a bittersweet time for Nick Card and his colleagues, but archaeologists think about time differently to the rest of us. The Ness O'Brodgar site has been there for thousands of years. Well, the archaeology's been there for thousands of years, and it's not going to go anywhere, because it's going to be covered back up. It's hoped the work done over the coming months will protect it for thousands more years. Nick Card is sad to be covering up their work. He's sure it's the right thing to do. Now, he's the one who's in charge. We must leave stuff for future archaeologists who will have better techniques than we do today. Archaeologists' prime concern is protecting the site for future generations, and that's my utmost concern. Hopefully, our legacy will always be an important part of Orkney. And I think that is a really sad but really interesting way of looking at archaeology, a different way of looking at archaeology. And as we move on now, we're going to look at this. Now, I started off with this last week, but we didn't actually. What we did, we looked at this site, and we had this map there. You know, and we could see some of the sites in there. I know it's a bit blurry, but I'll explain what's what. And I mentioned about sort of the geophys type stuff. So basically, somebody's online. They're mentioning about lots of really interesting things to do with Stonehenge, and nice to have you on, my friend. Right, that's somebody on YouTube. I'm going to say hi. Good. Right, so the next bit today is now Iron Age, right? Iron Age interior design, mapping the inside of Dorset's Hill Fort enclosures. As I've said before, and as I said last week, some of the hill forts out there have got lots of houses and lots of things inside. Other sites are just used for storage of animals and so on, right? So this is what this survey is about. So overlooking Hambledon Hill, one of Dorset's most famous hill forts, and we've got geophysical survey information that sheds light on the wonderful site of Hambledon Hill. Now, basically, what you've got a few really interesting places up here. If I can get that on there, right. So what we've got Hambledon Hill and we've got Hod Hill there. We'll do Badbury Rings as well, and what we'll also do, we'll mention Maiden Castle, and we've mentioned Henglesbury Head, and there's lots of other locations. These black things are in fact hill forts, right? So there's a lot of them in Dorset. There's a lot to see in Dorset, and so what we're going to do, our friend, one of our friends online, they're talking about sort of the properties and sort of conductivity of these types of stone sites, like Stonehenge, but we are now looking at these hill forts. So across Dorset, oh, there we go. Across Dorset, impressive earthworks mark the location of Iron Age hill forts. Until recently, little archaeological attention has been paid to what lay within these mighty ramparts. Now, thanks to modern geophysics, the picture is beginning to come into focus, and that's exactly what we're going to look at. And so what we're thinking of is, as you can see, that's very dramatic. That's visually striking. That is a monument that really spits as the Iron Age at its best. Sort of a pillow there that's just been completely Iron Age, zonked out banks and ditches. So appearing from what we do see with these sites, like for example Maiden Castle, appearing from the late Bronze Age and reaching their peak in the Middle Iron Age, Dorset is particularly rich in such enclosures, enormous sites. Dorset itself, and I don't know if they're all on you, I don't know if that adds up, but Dorset itself has 35 spectacular, unbelievably, some of them world-breaking hill forts, and obviously Maiden Castle on there. There's our. Let's just go back to this again. There's our. Here we go. Oh, get rid of that. There's our wonderful Maiden Castle there. Obviously in relation to Hamilton Hill, but Dorset itself has there within the county boundaries. Dorset itself, it has got 35 of these sites, these hill forts, these bank and ditch enclosures, these Iron Age sites that began their life in the Bronze Age, peaked roughly around 300, 200 years BC, so 2,300 years ago. Now, they're in amongst the 35 there are smaller bank and ditch enclosures, hill forts. There's more. Yes, there is within Dorset alone, and we've also got ones that are still to be found. There we go. And hello, Reese, who's actually just joined us, one of our subscribers online. So what they've been doing is just doing some geophysical surveys. And also the question is, how many of these sites have been archaeologically excavated? Well, Maiden Castle has definitely been archaeologically excavated, definitely, full stop. There's been lots of archaeological excavations at lots of these sites, but not on a very large scale as compared with the likes of Maiden Castle. So again, these things are being investigated, and some of the groundbreaking work has been through Bournemouth University. Naturally, it's on their patch. And what Bournemouth University have been doing is creating detailed records, geophysical detailed records, and aerial photography, and putting all the information together, including the likes of field walking data, excavation evidence, and even metal detecting evidence. In fact, metal detector enthusiasts shouldn't be anywhere near these hill fort sites, but obviously those that do come a cropper, hopefully some of that's going to be recorded. One of the things when we're looking, this is Maiden Castle, one of the things that we're thinking of with these sites is how they're constructed, what phases they look at, where they come from, the Bronze Age, where they go into the Iron Age, how things develop. We do believe, for example, Maiden Castle was actually two hillocks that have actually been joined together to create one massive, absolutely huge site. So what is a bank and ditch enclosure, i.e. what is a hill fort? Now the term is, as many have noted, one of convenience, a useful, if not always entirely topographically accurate, archaeological descriptor. The elephant in the room. Not all such monuments being found on the highest points in the landscape. Some of these hill forts can be within valleys, some can be on the edge of cliffs, some can be on hillocks, some can be above the landscape, some can be below the landscape, on the sides of hills, all sorts of things. Neither, it must be acknowledged, is an association with fortification always helpful. Are these forts? In lots of ways, no. It would be very difficult to defend something like this with the small numbers, the manpower. The banks and ditches may have had other purposes, other reasonings, such as showing off, prestige. such as wanting to keep what you've got there safe from animals such as Roman packs of wolves or foxes or bears or things like that, and the odd people. For many, enclosures may originally have been designed for purposes other than simply defense and military engagement. So again, I go back to what I usually say: if you're always thinking about military engagement, we wouldn't be here today, because we'd have all killed each other long time since. And again, most recognizable forms of hill forts or bank and ditch enclosures appear roughly the end of the Bronze Age, as we've already mentioned. So we're looking at 800, 750 years BC, and then we go do. What we do see is, when we're looking at these sites, is that they do start off with they do start off with one set of bank and one set of ditch, but then eventually they become loads of banks and ditches. When you think about a single bank and ditch, it's known as a univallet. And can anyone tell me what a hill fort or a bank and ditch enclosure is called when there's more than one bank and ditch? Can you tell me what that's called, Roger?
Multivalent.
Multivalent. Roger is completely correct. Now, lots of these sites can be ranged from 1 hectare in area, which is 2.5 acres, 5 hectares in area, or they can be a massive 50 acres in area, right? So huge fort. You're a bit slow there, Reese. I know you've got multivalent. So averaging 5 hectares in this extent, these sites, when we think about 5 hectares, it's basically the size of a big football ground. Basically, an acre is the area within a football ground, the playing pitch, but hectare is sort of, a big area, right? So which is extending from a football ground into the stands and all the rest of it, some of the parking. That's the scale of a hectare. And the shape of these earthworks are not circular. Very few are actually circular. Some are weird shapes like this. It's sort of and when you look at this, it actually stretches all the way from over here, there, and what we've got there. So quite really odd things. They're like big sort of oblong sausages with loads of banks and ditches, but we won't start talking about causeway enclosures as a completely Neolithic thing, something completely different. What we usually see is sometimes we see a simple entrance or a bloody complicated entrance like this one, which is, oh, there we go. Look at that entrance. Very, very complex. Some can be very complicated. Some can be very sort of simple. But this is Maiden Castle, right? So I'm glad my notes tell me this. So when we think about these sites, what we do find is that they start off maybe as enclosures that have been abandoned, and then they get very complex. One thing I need to say now, actually 2 things. There are over 5,000 hill forts spread across Britain, drum roll, and also a big chunk of them weren't even occupied or were abandoned at the time of the Roman invasion of Britain in 43 AD. And actually, I will say this, that there were a big chunk of occupied Iron Age sites at the time of AD 43 that didn't have any banks and ditches around them at all, right? And Reese has just mentioned Oswestry as yes, yeah, that's a really interesting one at Oswestry, which I'm sure Drina may have visited at one stage.
Yeah.
Yes,
I was born there.
You were born at the hill fort.
Yeah.
Oh,
You were born. My God, did you ever used to play there, Roger? David,
Sorry?
did you ever used to play at the
Yes.
Oswestry? Oh
Yeah.
God. So you may have bumped into Drina wandering there at one stage.
Yeah.
You may have pulled her hair as she wandered down the lane, or chucked some apples at her or something. Oh, wow. I didn't know you actually came from Oswestry. I tell you what, you're a dark horse, you two. Blimey hell. Okay, then. Well, like you, like I'm going to say it, David, Oswestry is a massively interesting site. It's really, you get lost there. Best time to go there in the summer months with a picnic, I may add. So what we've got with the when we look at hill forts, what we usually do is we look at the banks and the ditches, right? Actually, the excavation that we will be starting very soon will be looking at a ditch, because we know that in that ditch there'll be the material that we need to actually date the site, right? But that's what archaeologists do. We need dating material. We need to know what these sites are about. We need to know what we're getting into. The ditches and the banks are very, very important, right? So usually what we see, we usually see the bank as being, if it's been agricultural site, has been pushed into the ditch, right? And everything in the bottom of the ditch is going to be preserved, right? So that's what we do. So there's been little, well, when I say little in a way, so most of the archaeologists have been excavating within the banks and ditches, right? And then eventually going in. And it's a technique that is developed in archaeology when it's called wall following, right? So when you look at archaeological sites, you usually find that the archaeologists know what the site looks like, because they've excavated where the walls are, and they've not excavated within. So at least we could get a plan of the site, because time's limited. And when you're going to get results, you're going to follow walls, right? You're going to follow the banks and ditches. But what archaeologists have been asking, this is our site that we looked at last week. What archaeologists have been asking is that since the 1980s, what can we do at these sites, right, instead of excavating? And then what we've done, we've started to see aerial photography has been with us for a very long time, may I add. People have looked at aerial photography for over 120 odd years. And don't spout the Wright brothers at me, because people have actually been 1906. People have actually been taken aerial photographs of these sites since the 1800s in balloons, right? So, but what is new over the past 30 to 40 years, particularly in the 1980s, the first time we saw geophysics, wasn't it? We actually saw time team, right? We actually saw time team, right? That was when time team came. Was it time team in 1992 anyway? That was the first time we saw geophysics. But geophysics has been with us for quite some time, actually. It started to get big in the 1980s. So what we're starting to see with these types of sites is what is actually beyond this. Whoa, look at that there. What is beyond this? One of the banks and ditches of Maiden Castle, right? What is within, right? What is there to see? Is within this bank and ditch, right? Is there settlement? Is there storage? Is there nothing at all? And that's the point. Some of these sites we don't really find anything at all. And the reason why we don't find anything at all is because they've been damaged in later periods with agriculture and farming. For example, there's a site in the Vale of Glamorgan called Caer-Dunnaf. Right, I've taken groups to the site Caer-Dunnaf in the Vale of Glamorgan.
Yeah.
Did I take you, Dirty Rog? I think we did.
Yes.
So anyway,
Yeah.
Don't get too excited, Roger. I know you used to get up to all sorts of these expeditions with me, but we don't want to talk about it. There's children watching.
The sheep out.
Leave it. Right. Anyway, Caer-Dunnaf, for example, when we go there, what I'm pointing out to people is that is a medieval bank and boundary there. That might be something to do with the Roman period or whatever, right? And so the problem is they've been mucked around with, they've been altered and changed, right? So again, when we're looking at sites like this, so the appearance of these more defined and complex forts or forms of hill forts enclosures may reflect broader developmental change in early and middle Iron Age society, right? And we've got Squirrel Sniper just joined us as well. Hi, Squirrel Sniper. So these sites have got as much as a diverse function and projection of what was going on, as much as the reasons for building them in the first place, right? So what I mean by that, isn't that the same thing? No, it's not. Basically, somebody wants to build a hill fort, for this reason, and somebody wants to build hill fort, bank and ditch enclosures for that reason, right? These people think that way. These people think that way, right? These people don't need any banks and ditches. They're going to have an open settlement, right? So all of these things come into play, looking at the landscape, looking at as we're understanding this, right? There is something that is more obvious, that this is a Roman idea, right? You know, well, I was just actually going to draw on the screen with my black marker, then I realized I couldn't. But that there is the Roman site, which has been added later, and the rest of it is naturally Iron Age. And one thing, this is like a Roman thing. I'm going to tell you a Roman thing, right? One second, if you could just bear with me a minute. I just got a phone call coming in. Hello. I'm smack bang in the middle of the lecture.
Oh, don't worry then, I'll let myself in.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. Okay, I'll speak to you soon. Love you. Bye. Right, where were we? Right, back to that point. Sorry, I had to take that call. Back to this point. So when we're looking at a site like this, when we're looking at any of these banks and ditch enclosures, one thing that we've got to be thinking about is that the Roman idea is that when the Romans went into an area, even whether they needed a bank or a ditch around something, right, they would create a bank and a ditch because it would enclose an area. It's your space, or as the Germans would call it, your Lebensraum, right? It's your space, it's your territory, it's your area. That's why you put a bank and ditch around it, right? It doesn't necessarily mean to be for defensive reasons. You're putting a bank and ditch around it because it's the zone. It's your sense of permanence, right? That's the Roman idea. And then if you take that Roman idea into the Iron Age, which is hundreds and hundreds of years earlier, you can see my point, right? It's like basically, let's go and play marbles, Margaret, right? But what we're going to do, Margaret, we're going to put pillows in an area, right? We can play marbles, and we know where the marbles are going, right? I'm going to play marbles with Drina, and we're not going to have pillows around the thing, and the marbles are going to go everywhere, and we're not going to know what's going on, right? So this is the same concept. You need to know what's going on by putting a sense of perimeter around it, a sense of perspective, right? That's what we need to do. So again, thinking of these types of sites, again, back to Maiden Castle, again, thinking about something like this, the sense of permanence. When you think about Maiden Castle, this is quite a big one. Maiden Castle really kicks us into another realm, because Maiden Castle is absolutely bloody huge. The area enclosed by Maiden Castle is 50 acres, and that doesn't include the banks and ditches around the outside, right? I don't know. I've never actually seen a figure. So Maiden Castle, the area inside is 50 acres. If the internal bank, right, would take you, takes you, if you walk slowly, it'll take you 20 minutes to go around the around the top of that, right? It's a whole kilometer inside, right? If you walk the top bank, the inner escarpment, the inner defense, right? If you walk that, it would take you 10 minutes if you're just just having a good old wander around, right? 20 minutes if you're a bit slow, right? So you could say semi-permanent elite settlement. No, I'm not going to go with that. A permanent, semi-permanent. When we use the word semi-permanent, what do we need? Because the thing is, a site like this is not going to have enough water in the summer months, right? So therefore, you're going to go in the plains around it, right? This is a place where you would use for storage and maybe distribution, right? Maybe there could be a sense of religious and ceremonial functions with the site. It's really difficult to understand what's going on. And the thing is, what's going on? This is the thing that really kicks you in the carbuncles down below. when I mentioned at the beginning, I mentioned last week, for example, that some of these sites were actually abandoned before the Romans got here. They were abandoned, and you think, but where did the people go? They're still there, and you're thinking, hang on a minute, right? So, right, Karl, you're getting confused. So what you've got the Iron Age, and Karl says that in the early Iron Age there wasn't too much warfare. Towards the end of the Iron Age, there may have been some disputes, and there's maybe some problems. But if you get to the end of the Iron Age and you're getting rid of your banks and ditch enclosures, right? Therefore, these things can't have been for defence in the first place, because people are now abandoning these sites and they're going out there in the landscape and they're just not really using them because they're no longer practical. So this is the thing. This is the thing, that there's a load of elaborate biodivisions to try and understand what these sites are about, and not one actually has the same understanding or perspective. It's the same. It's the same as it's the same as we live in Great Britain today. I'm going to be really crude. Where I live in West Wales, we don't have any Greggs, we don't have any McDonald's, right? We don't have any Tesco's. We have the odd co-op and the odd thing, and there's very few chain things. There's no banks, right? There's very few police. Anything that goes wrong, we sort out our own problems. We sort out our own stuff, right? But you living in towns or cities, you have Tesco's, you have your Greggs, you have law and order, right? You have police wandering around, right? That's today, but that was like that back then. People had different ways of doing things back then in different areas, as we do today, right? And this is what these hill forts are about. This is what we're seeing, these banks and ditch enclosures, the elaborate forms, the elaborate entrances, and all these things that actually go on. There's a lot going on, right? And so in many ways, the big question is, maybe a little bit of a minor big question, if you think about this time, what would have happened if I love this thing, and I know a few people, there's somebody online saying that isn't the shape of Maiden Castle in some way resembling a phallus, and I just thought I wouldn't say that, but I just have, right? But when we think of the question, there's a few people online talking about the Romans and stuff. If the Roman invasion had never taken place in AD 43 and the Romans never got a foothold in Britain, it's very likely that most of these sites would have been abandoned naturally anyway, and they would have just built normal towns and cities. You can't build a town and a city in here, and the reason why is that it would there's no water. You can't. There's not much water there. Lots of these are high up, and even if there's a well or a water or a spring, there's just not going to be enough to keep people going. And lots of these are nowhere near rivers and so on that you need with trade and so on, and they become obsolete and no more. So yeah. So therefore, what's going on is something very, very different in the mindsets of these people. Right, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to not jump forward. I'm going to go to this, right? Badbury Ring. So we'll actually come back to this because we've got a lot to get through. So when we think about this, you know, one of you mentioned about the Druids and stuff at the beginning, and sort of that Druidic thing, which is to do with tribes and so on. So when we think about these hill forts and what you're seeing today is the final phase of activity, right? The final phase of the end game, right? And there's much debate concerning the apparent death of these sites, right? There's an apparent death of seeing what had occurred for generation after generation. So what we're talking about is, if you want to put in a box, you could say Bronze Age, 800 years BC, 2,800 years ago. 1 minute, the Bronze Age people, they're thinking, oh, but we'll have banks and ditches around things, and instead of open settlements, and then we build these things, and then towards the end of towards the birth of Christ, these sites start to become abandoned, right? and when they are abandoned, those farmsteads around the outside that radiate from these, that actually supplying food to take to these places and keep these things going, those are the places that people are now permanently living full time, and that's what's going on with the landscape with lots of these abandoned. By and large, this end had apparently been imagined. Was this a violent thing that's going on? What's going on? So lots of people have been thinking toward the end, running up to the Roman period, right? Running up to the Roman period, that's what we've got to get. We've got to get to Maiden Castle again. When we get to the Roman period again, we think about that. This idea that something quite violent happened and that hill forts were facing against hill forts and there was a lot of battling going on came from the work of the likes of Mortimer and Tessa Wheeler, excavated at Maiden Castle in 1934, 1937. And then excavations by the likes of Ian Richmond at Hodhill in 1951 and 1958. Right. So this idea that there was this big fight between these hill fort people, and there was all this warfare, and they thought, Christ, we're not going to have hill forts anymore. They're causing us to fight. We're going to live in the valleys. Does that make sense? But that idea came from these archaeologists working at these sites, very well-known archaeologists working at these sites, Maiden Castle in particular. And I got to say that that Tessa Wheeler, Lady Tessa Wheeler, wore the trousers at Maiden Castle between 1934 and 1937. She was the one who had the balls to carry on the excavation, while Sir Mortimer Wheeler was working on lots of other sites and seeing himself in newspapers and all the rest of it. Right. Now, so this whole thing, this whole thing, when we look at Maiden Castle, as one of the largest and most impressive of all hill forts in Britain, Maiden Castle certainly appealed to Mortimer Wheeler's sense of drama. To be honest with you, he was as gay and flowery as I am when I'm presenting history and archaeology, but he was much better at it because he was on television a lot more, and he was the one who brought these sites alive. And to make these gay and apparently wonderful sites becoming alive, he needed to basically pinpoint these sites in a period of warfare and fighting, right? And to fund the excavation, Sir Mortimer Wheeler basically said that at the back of this site, right, at the back, oh, hang on a minute. Oh, we got this little dot thing again. Oh, look at that. Hang on a minute. Hang on a minute. Let's just get the little dot thing a minute. Hang on. Oh, hang on. We had a little dot thing then. I like the dot thing. Let's see if we can get the dot thing again. There we go. At the back here, right, this area was the area that Sir Mortimer Wheeler excavated with Tessa, right, about by there, right, I think it is, or is a bit further on it, but it's towards the back, right. Sir Mortimer Wheeler found what he referred to as the military cemetery, right. He referred to as something known as the military cemetery. And his final summing up of the excavation results, there was a masterclass in archaeological historical interpretation. So Mortimer Wheeler, and we'll take a look at this in the future when we're looking specifically at Maiden Castle again. He evoked the description of the relentless march of the Roman legions towards the hill fort ramparts, Maiden Castle, and the bloody battle that followed. But did this actually take place? He's basing this on a war cemetery that he found. But when you refer to it as a war cemetery, most of the bodies don't show any signs that they've ever been killed in battle. One or two do. One's got a ballista bolt in the spine, and well, that's obviously a sign that he's been killed in some kind of fighting. But when they actually started to look at the remains, where that red dot is, when he started looking at the remains, what he actually found, right, was actually bodies that actually dated over a period of time, not all one event, right? And then what we then have, we've got the similar problem when we're thinking of another archaeologist working in the 1950s. Ian Richmond said that there was a siege involved in this site at Hodhill, which is also in Dorset, just up the road, just northeast of it, right? So he said it as well. So in the consciousness, right, if, say, for example, Roger and I went to school at different times, but I'm going to speak for Roger, and he can say I'm wrong or not. But when I went to school and did history, there was these lectures by my history teacher of showing Roman soldiers assaulting these sites, and Oswestry as well. I'm sure David was told the same thing. That there would we're boys. We used to love this stuff in history, didn't we? This fighting and stuff. But this all comes from the time of Sir Mortimer Wheeler and Ian Richmond working at Maiden Castle and Hod Hill, respectively, saying that these sites had a violent demise at the hands of the Romans. So there's nothing inherently wrong with the approach that these two archaeologists took. Both men, unfortunately, shifted attention away from the hill forts themselves. In the years that followed, it is fair to say we have sometimes lost sight of the context that hill forts operated within and the societies that brought them into being. So in other words, what we've done, we've become obsessed with big sieges going on with these sites. But when we actually really look at the archaeological evidence, it's likely that out of the 5,000 hill forts across Britain, roughly 5% of them, even less than that, roughly 5% of them show any signs of any siege, any fighting, any raping, any pillage. There's no evidence at all other than maybe 5%, even it's 1%, right? Because so lots of these scenes that we saw in history in school were wrong, right? And what we've got to do, and I've been reminded online by our friend Squirrel Stiper, that there are other events in history that show catastrophic things happening, whether they're interpreted right or wrong. But what we've got to do, we need the archaeological evidence to really tell us what is going on, what is really fundamentally telling us what is going on with these sites. And the thing is, when we're excavating these sites, we start again, when we're researching these sites, we can't really excavate them. We can't really dig holes everywhere, right? So what we've got to do, we've got to look towards geophysics, if there's any ploughing going on at these sites. Some of these hill forts, they do allow ploughing still. So what we do, we jump in there and we ask the farmer if we can get permission, or the Secretary of State to look at the field walking evidence. That's what we do. So lots of these sites, instead of excavating them to understand them, we started looking at the geophysics and the aerial photography in a greater way. And there's actually been a whole project undertaken, for example, a bit further north, the Wessex Hill Forts projects as well, have been demonstrating possibilities to resolve and understand the internal layouts without excavating it in the first place. So what we've done, when we again look at these hill forts across this area, the majority of the hill forts in Dorset are located on chalk, right? So there's not going to be much stone used in them at all. What you're seeing is bank and ditches and so on. Although a few occur on the limestone of Purbeck, right, a bit further south, and in the clay valleys to the extreme west of the county. Much of these 35 big identified sites themselves, more than a third have been subjugated, that's a nice word, subjected to some form of archaeological investigation. But only bits have been looked at these sites. When you think about the average scale of the archaeological excavation, for example, we looked at the Nessa Brodgar earlier on, did we not? We look at the Nessa Brodgar. If we ask Nick Card how much of the Neolithic pseudo town, if I want to call it, at the Nessa Brodgar, the settlement of the Nessa Brodgar, whatever it is, I don't think we could even call it a settlement because it's just too big for a settlement. But whatever they're looking at the Nessa Brodgar, I'm sure Nick Card would agree that he's probably only excavated 1/10 of it, right? And the 10th that he has excavated, he probably understands about 30 to 40% of that. Right. So unfortunately, the problem is with investigating these sites is they're so huge that the best way to get around them is by looking at geophysics, by understanding what's really going on. And geophysics doesn't cost as much as archaeological excavation. Archaeological excavation, to be honest with you, is a pain in the arse. Sorry to use my French, because it produces things such as artifacts. what you do with those artifacts. And you've also, it produces big piles of earth, which you've actually got to backfill on the site, right? So when we look at archaeological excavation, only usually 10% of archaeological work is actual excavation itself. 90% is spent with everything else, right? Including looking at the finds, publishing stuff, and looking at your measurements and so on. So so Mortimer Wheeler, oh, let's go to that ditch. We want that ditch. Let's just lie in that ditch with all the ladies, Roger. Mortimer Wheeler conjures an extraordinary vivid account, shut up, Rod, of Roman assault on Maiden Castle, but more recent reassessment of excavation data from the site has called this narrative into question. He's very talking about these sites as being these great places of battle have been talked into question. The great Sir Mortimer Wheeler himself is probably Tessa Wheeler. Do you know what I'd like to do? I'd like to look what Tessa Wheeler thought about the excavations at Maiden Castle compared with Sir Mortimer Wheeler. I'm sure she wouldn't have been into the blood and guts as Sir Mortimer Wheeler was, but then again, that's something else. So Mortimer Wheeler, R.E.M. Wheeler, interpreted as evidence of burnt out houses, is in fact so when he found evidence of burnt out houses at Maiden Castle, right? He basically said, look, all this evidence, all these burnt houses indicate great destruction in a battle, right? But the evidence has been re-looked at as being evidence of iron working, which produces very high staining of soils and metallurgic evidence, right? And that's the problem. So they've gone back and looked at his archaeology. While human remains dubbed a war cemetery represented nothing of the sort, bodies having been laid over a long period of time. So and do you know what? They actually found some of the bodies with pots and laid out nicely and so on. So if you look at a war cemetery, the bodies, most war cemeteries, even the ones from the First World War and the Second World War, right? To get rid of the bodies quickly to aid against flies and rats and stuff, they just dump them in a ditch, right? That's what you do. You got a ditch, you dump the bodies in a ditch. That's what you do. The bodies in the cemetery at the site were not dumped in a ditch. And when we do look at Maiden Castle as a lecture itself, we found that they were all laid out. And the famous one with the ballista bolt in, and you know what? If I could find that postcard, right, that I actually have from the 1930s, to make money for the excavation, they actually produced postcards, right, for the tourists visiting the site. So penny postcard with body with a ballista bolt in it. Send it to your missus. Go on, she'll be disgusted. Right. Found in the spine of, I used to have a postcard, is actually a spearhead, right? It's not a ballista bolt. I've actually made that mistake. I've said it's ballista bolt, but it's actually a spearhead. While most of the other injuries recorded in the cemetery may relate to execution rather than combat, or they just died. And the ballista bolts found during Ian Richmond's excavations at Hod Hill, the other site, in the 1950s, could easily and more plausibly have come from the Roman fort. Basically, what we usually find, and Andy mentioned something like this with Arnside, didn't you, Andy? That there's two schools of thought with the with not the Arnside, Ambleside. Sorry, Andy. With the Ambleside evidence, they've been looking at the Ambleside evidence. One set of archaeologists said that the ballista bolts and the bullets found there, the sling bullets and the catapult evidence found at Ambleside, one set of archaeologists say it's due to practice. One set of archaeologists said it's due to the fact that the site was placed under attack. Which one do you believe? It sanctioned the likes of Ian Richmond and Sir Mortimer Wheeler excavations at the hill forts in Dorset to basically say that it played into the narrative. It said that there was combat, they were fighting, right? Except the evidence at Hod Hill may indicate that they were practicing. That it's like a modern day soldier today. You go a modern day soldier, for example, on a shooting range, they do shoot off a few bullets now and then, right? And you get unexploded ordnance hanging around, right? We do it in the modern warfare. They did it back then. So it's likely that the archaeological evidence at Hod Hill in the main, and some of the archaeologists that made a castle, some of the archaeologists that made a castle tell us that it's quite possible that these were being abandoned 100 years before, well, 140 odd years before the Romans ever started to conquer Britain in AD 43, right? So it's likely before the Romans actually got here, they weren't really as defensive as they had been. If that's the case, right? So when we think about this, when we think about what's going on, the geophysics at these sites is not easily done, right? Because it needs to be done at times of the year when ground coverage is actually quite low, right? So having carried out the surveys at these sites in sub-zero temperatures, lots of these sites are windswept. So basically, some people voluntary doing this. Geophysics has produced compelling evidence of roundhouses invisible to the naked eye. Now, a book that I'm writing, and I need to get my backside onto doing it, a book that I'm writing, looking at the archaeology of a hill fort near us, with Banker Ditch enclosure called the Bulwarks. I've actually got photographs of the roundhouses, right? You can actually see at a certain time of the year, you can see the staining, circular staining in the grass, where the grass grows a little bit taller as it grows around the sort of drip line of the hut, right? But usually you can't see this. You can't see this. Another site near me called Dunraven, right? You can clearly see these things, but usually you can't actually see what's going on at these sites with the naked eye. But geophysics has produced compelling evidence of roundhouses, alignments, various other things, whatever you want to call it, storage things in the ground, 4 posters, and all the rest of it. So to the naked eye, but you can see this via the geophys across the survey. We across this site in particular, Hod Hill, we can see a range of discrete internal forms ranging from limited scatters of pits and features to pits clustered into distinct zones. Pits associated with roundhouses themselves, a distribution of roundhouses, and other built forms divided and arranged trackways and roads. And when we're looking at this archaeology, it's archaeology. There's no dates on this, right? So in other words, what you can see is you can see a load of towards the center of the screen. Hang on, can we get that? Where you can see towards the center of the screen, you could see an arrangement of houses that are intercutting other houses. Those there, they're all intercutting other houses. So these are over periods of time, right? And that needs to be recognized. And some of the houses might be just to keep animals. Other the houses might be for human habitation. Other hill forts, we have hardly any roundhouses at all, and they're basically used for storage, right? So again, what you can see you can see little black things. Hang on, you can see, hang on, over there. You can see little black things. They could be absolutely anything. They could be storage pits, couldn't they? Right. So I think what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take a break. Right, I'm going to take a break, and what I'm going to do is we're going to have some questions, and I'm going to I was just checking then to make sure that I need to make sure that we try and get this completed today. So let's just see how it goes. Right, okay then. So let's just stop that, and let's see if there's any questions.
Yeah, Carl.
Yes, Rog.
I don't know if it may be a long shot.
It probably is.
Hold up, but I'm wondering if some of the ditches might have been for water storage.
Yes, they're lined with clay. Exactly. Unfortunately, with clay, it deteriorates with normal soil, right? So it's going to break down because when you use clay, it's dug from down below and it's put in the wrong context, so it just breaks down. So if any of them were lined with clay, that evidence is going to go. But you could, really good point. Yeah, so obviously there's going to be more water storage at these sites.
Ready way of finding water, although these weren't forts under siege and all that generally, they were living there, and quite a lot of people were animals and people need the water. And the thing is as well, the ditches may stop animals wandering off and rustlers coming in.
Yes.
Could be a second use, which is the most important, I know, but they certainly would need a lot of water. And I thought, whether the ditches as they stand could have contained it with open ends, but they could seal them off, other things could have been done to contain the water, and a ready way of doing it, possibly. I've never seen anything written about it, discussed.
Well, actually, a good point. I'm glad you mentioned that. That's a really, really good point. 2 points for that. I've got Borrow sheep, right? And they're highly intelligent sheep. You can't stop them. You've got to. I for my Borrow sheep, right? We have got to have fencing. For our male, our fencing has to be 2 meters high, because our male can jump 1.5 meters high over a fence with barbed wire, right? So these are the type of animals that we've got today that they had back then, our Borrow. If you've got a palisade around these places, which is 3 meters high, it's going to be 3 meters high to keep the animals in, right? Yeah. Because my Borrow would make easy work of jumping over a fence, which is 1.5 meters high. Yeah, I know that because I live there. I'm here, right? And Roger's point about water, animals do avoid water, right? And that in many ways, animals need water, but they don't like crossing it, right? Possibly. That is a good point. There's very little evidence there's any water in these ditches, right? But I know what you're saying. You're talking about ponds and areas of water within these locations, which is a good point.
Some of the ditches, some, not all of it, but some of it possibly like a dual use something. The handy way of containing things and getting a ready use, which you need a lot all the time for everything, besides anything else, making things, washing, if they did much, and so on. But there we are. That's it.
Exactly. Well, you need water for tanning. You need water for treating things. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You need water for lots of.
I'm going to move in a minute, Carl.
All right then, Rog. Well, we'll see you next week, babe.
Yes, I'll be away with our Jilly next week, down Dorset, to see all these places. I've been to Maiden Castle, but we'll visit other stuff around, and one near her on the East Dorset. Have a look at that somewhere, see what's around.
Anyway, Heddingsbury Head, exactly. Go to that one. Take care, Rod. See you soon.
Bye.
I'll
be back. See you soon.
Yeah, I know you'll be back. Yeah, so he's away for a week. Okay.
Thanks, Carl. Interesting. Brought up a lot. That did a lot.
Cheers, Rog. Cheers, Rog. Give my love to the thingamajig. Anything from you, David?
No, thank you.
Right. Anything from you, Gina?
No.
I'll give my love to Idris when I see him next, but I've never met him at all, ever. Anne?
No, I find it, you always bring up these new things and you keep it interesting, but I'm afraid I'm falling asleep. I really must go to bed now. So I have insomnia in the middle of the night and often lose a lot of sleep. And if I do, I'm not functioning well at this time of the evening.
And you've made the effort tonight and you've done a big chunk. So it's been really good, and hopefully see you next week.
Yes, I will be here, hopefully. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Have a nice night, Anne.
Bye.
Have a nice night, Anne. Right, what about you, Margaret? And then I'm gonna we'll do Andy, and I gotta keep an eye on the animals. It's like, go on, Margaret.
Well, in the Iron Age, Britain was made up of all these Iron Age tribes that the Romans named for us. We know a lot of the tribal leaders. We've got the Roman names of these people, and they all seem to be linked to hill forts. But if there were 5,000 hill forts, there can't have been 5,000 tribal leaders, can there?
I would say yes, there was. Because what we've got to look at one of these bank and ditch enclosures and hill forts as being part of a community. which in my book defines a tribe. If you look at the work, if you look at the word of Lord, the work, the archaeologist, the only archaeological Lord Colin Renfrew, this is one of the things that he talks about the Neolithic period. That the Neolithic period, I know this is a bit before, but the Neolithic period, each of these communities had a tomb that they'd take their loved ones into this tomb. We find this as a phenomenon in places like Orkney, right? There's no reason why that process didn't continue, where you had, like, for example, Scotland. We looked at the Broch last week at Gurness. A Broch itself, community, Broch. Next, community, Broch. You may have had somebody. The thing is, right, we think about this idea of control and organized communities and all the rest of it, but in many ways it happens today. We got councils. We've got a city hall or a town hall, and we've got a council. It's something that we do today. And how many councils have we got in Britain? There's I don't know. There's 500 unitary authority councils in Britain, right? And there's a main town. Well, it's something that we do today, and also the Romans made things easier. They defined that there's the Cantai tribe around Kent. They're similar types of people, similar ideas. That's what they're going to be called. The Catavilani people, they may have been a confederation of people who actually called themselves the Catavilani people because they've got Catu on their coins. The Iceni people may have been a confederation of people, but these people worked unitary most of the time. It's just something that the Romans have picked up on.
Yeah, if you remember those coins that were found that I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, with the name, they said a new king, Esumatos, and they linked him to Danebury Hillfort. So
and he may have been the king of Danebury Hillfort.
Well, yes. So Caratacus could have been. I don't know where the Catavilani were.
Catavilani, northwest of London.
So was there a hill fort there?
There's loads of hill forts there. There's thousands of these things across Britain. They're all over the place.
Well, were they just for the elite then?
No, we're not saying that at all. Keep listening to the lecture. I haven't been saying that at all. It's basically it's a sense of identity. It's a badge. It's a badge of identity. It's our hill fort. It's our place. It's our shop in Arnside. It's our pub in Arnside. It's our local boozer. This is what this thing is about. It's where we would meet. Like the Broch in Scotland is where we would meet. It's that sense of community. It's that sense of identity. This is what these things are about. This is what we've got to thinking about more about that. More about being people rather than killing people. That's what we're talking about.
They didn't necessarily kill one another, but I'm sure there would have been a bit of argy-bargy.
Well, my thought better than yours. Right. Okay then, Andy, and I gotta pop out.
No, I have no questions, thanks. I find them fascinating places.
We got lots.
Because we're learning so much about them now. So.
Yeah, we've got lots more to say. And I tell you what, I was saying to somebody the other day, I was saying, there's no way am I going to be able to do all the stuff that I said in the Iron Age. Every week I'm saying we're going to do a bit of this, and my list has just gone off kilter. There's just so much we're not going to do, but there's so much we're doing, and we're just going to be happy with what we got. So what we're going to do, we're going to have a 15-minute break. We're going to be back at 9:20 as usual. I will speak to you soon. I can't see a blooming thing because I can't see the light bulb. Right, okay then. I'll see you soon, guys.
All right.
I'll see you soon. La 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 la. I can't find the bloody light bulb. Oh, I can see. La 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 la. I'll take it to you. If it's supposed to be, we should see some other day.
I noticed the cookies have gone down a bit. Are we going to have to make more cookies? Or maybe. No. We'll do some tomorrow. Have to go soon. I've got Jasmine here, so she'll be raiding the biscuit barrel if I don't get back in there soon.
It's okay.
Are you fully recovered now then, David?
Oh, no, not by miles.
Oh, you're not?
Oh, can't drive for a month.
Oh, heck.
No, it'd be a long process, I think.
Oh, dear. That's no fun.
No. Very disconcerting.
Yeah. Which hospital were you taken to? Was it Lancaster?
Yes.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's nearer. Yeah. Did you have good care?
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
Absolutely wonderful.
Oh, good. I think I prefer Barrow Hospital to Lancaster. Yeah. Hmm. You're able to walk about though, just potter about the house.
Oh, yeah.
What about shopping? Do you get it delivered?
Well, my carer gets all my shopping, my niece.
Oh, that's good.
She's very good.
Does she live nearby?
About a mile away.
Oh, that's handy. You just don't know what's around the corner, do you?
No, no.
Just as well.
Mhm.
Oh, is it? Right. I'm back now, guys.
That's an interesting figure on the mantelpiece.
Whose mantelpiece?
On yours, next to the picture of the little girl, there's a.
Oh, right.
What's that? Is it a candle holder?
Yeah, it's a candle holder.
Oh, I like that.
It's a dragon candle holder, and that is my that is one of my children. That's Emily when she was very young.
She's sweet.
And also the other one is that's Princess Anne there.
Oh,
that's Princess Anne. Yeah, that because she's Chancellor of University of Highlands and Islands. So that's Princess Anne.
Did you have to bow?
Well, I did, but it was a bit embarrassing because I was warned by the university, don't stand on stage talking to her for too long.
And
so
you
after 2 minutes, I was being prompted. And everyone, it was very odd because we were having a conversation like, have you come far? Yeah. And I said, have you come far, Your Majesty? Oh, yeah, I have. Oh, what's it like then? Blah, 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 blah. And everyone in the cathedral is just hearing this conversation about me and her.
What do you call her? Do you have to call her mom?
I think I called her love at one stage. I can't remember.
Ducks.
Our friend Reese online, he's basically says, I just would like to thank you for doing these lectures. I love spending my Tuesday evenings listening and learning, and I know it takes a lot of time and effort to research and compile this info. Yes, thank you, Reese. And obviously the entertainment, you have total nut jobs on a Wednesday, but then again, what I tell about you guys on a Wednesday is something else. I only disparage Roger and disparage Roger on a Wednesday. Right, okay, let's crack on. Let's just crack on with it. So
I'll have to go by 10 because I've got my granddaughter here.
Right, what I'm gonna do, what I might think I'm doing is maybe if for example I'm running out of time, which I think I might, but we'll just crack on with where we are. So I gotta try and get into I gotta try and crack on. Right, okay, let's get back into it. So back at Hod Hill, we're looking at geophysical survey. This is magnetometry survey, and what we're finding is that they, as they're examining the round houses within, I don't know if you can clearly see the round houses on the screen. They're saying that for the first time, because of the geophysics, not archaeological excavation, but the geophysical survey, they're finding within this landscape with these bank and ditch enclosures, hill forts in Dorset and probably everywhere else as well, that they're finding that that in here they're finding that they got roundhouses with a ditch, with a ditch dug around them inside these hill forts, right? Which is unfortunate. I'm saying that because that's exactly what Roger was saying. Why have you got a house which has got a ring, which has got a ditch around it within this, and you're just thinking maybe the banks and ditches are about something completely different, because if you've got a house which has got a ditch around it, right, and these and usually the entrances are generally facing southeast, which for me here, anything when we've got anything facing southeast here, we've got easterly winds, and that sounds absolute nuts to me. Anyway, they're talking about the area with the ditch is like 15 meters within these, so they're miniature things within things, right? And they're seeing these at Hod Hill, and they're finding it Maiden Castle, right? And what they're also finding as well, is that they're finding structures as well. They're finding buildings, another type of building. They're finding a house platform, right, alongside these, which has no ditch around them. And you're thinking, well, hang on a minute, right? Okay, you've got one house with a ditch around it, and you've got another house which hasn't got a ditch around it. You know, and that's really weird, right? So okay then, right. So what's going on? Why have we got so much going on with these people? It might be that some of them have got ditches around them because that's one phase, because it alleviates a problem, right? Which is not because somebody's going to come and attack you, because you've got a big bank and ditch around the place anyway, right? So these ditches were probably intended to help keep the hut floor dry and to prevent the door wall from getting excessively damp and crumbling. But in steeper terrain, they do not seem to have been necessary. And the other thing as well is, I unfortunately I'm going to go on a tangent now, and I really shouldn't. But when I built this building, the reason why it's on stilts was for exact that reason, because we don't have damp. This building's not damp; it's as dry as anything. In fact, you can be. I was in here a day ago, right, and it was raining so heavily outside, right, and I'm thinking it's so dry inside. And I can't hear anything, right. So obviously these people were savvy. They put a ditch around it, and some of these buildings may have been on stilts as well. So environments like and also the other thing as well is, if the other thing, I'm going to say this from the point of view that we did the we did the blocks last week. I basically said about the blocks, you're not going to have render on the outside of the blocks because the rain's just going to wash it off. But then again, if you've got render, i.e. daub on the outside of these buildings, they've got overhangs for their buildings, the roof overhang, and then the water comes off that and it goes in the ditches. In environments like these, house platforms seem to have been terraced into the side of the slope. So they're looking out, you know. One of the hill forts in Dorset, known as Abbotsbury Hill Fort, that's on the plan. For example, it's said that these seemingly on a higher point, so that the water goes down the hill rather than them being on a lower point and the water goes to them. Makes perfect sense. And we see this sort of arrangement at Hod Hill as well. And it's what they're also seeing with Hod Hill is that the geophysics is not necessarily complete, because because it's been damaged by hill fort activity. Right now, here's an interesting thing. So when we go to, if we go on a bit, this is Hambledon Hill, and this isn't as detailed, but we've got this here at Hambledon Hill. What they're saying at Hambledon Hill, the slope is steeper still, and most of the site's dwellings are terraced into the hillside, but no ditches are apparent. Ploughing may have actually damaged parts of the site. So what we're seeing part of the site really well preserved, and other parts of the site which are not preserved. And this is the thing, you see. What we're getting disparities of evidence. Let's get to the oh, hang on, have we got that there? Let's go back a bit. There, got that one. This is a rather interesting one. And I've not seen it like this. Can you see the line going through the middle of the screen? And you can the sort of linear line. And I started to speed up then, but I'm gonna have to slow down a bit. That there is actually an earthwork known as a banked. Oh God, hang on. It's in Neolithic. It's dating. It's a yeah. It's just no, Andy. There's a certain word for it. You remember those long tapering banks? It was just a bank in the Neolithic period. Just a bank. It's not a cursus. A bank barrow. Yeah, that's right. A bank barrow. Yeah, I think it's a Neolithic bank barrow. This is 600 meters long. Right. It may look like a cursus monument, but it's not. It's a bank with a slight ditch. It looks revealed on either side, and that is a Neolithic feature that's been preserved within the landscape of the Iron Age fort, which I think is absolutely amazing, right? Absolutely hugely amazing. So yeah, bank barrow. Andy, I should have looked at my notes. It's known as a bank barrow. So again, looking at this settlement, understanding something like Maiden Castle, a huge site that has only been just touched upon by Sir Mortimer Wheeler and a few other workers. And what they can see is that there's groups of structures within this landscape. There's pathways. There's also you can see there as you zoom in. It's almost as if there's a hell of a lot of activity going on with this site. There really, really is. There's a lot of activity going on. It's not as detailed as if we look onto our likes of our Hod Hill. And what we've got also is, if we go to the other thing, is that the information's coming fast now. What we've got also is what they've actually been doing with Hambledon Hill. They're finding other things on there, like long barrows and other wonderful divisions and other senses of archaeology that you wouldn't really get, other definitions of archaeology that you wouldn't usually get by just aerial photography, or you just wouldn't usually get by archaeological excavation. Definitions of archaeology, as if we go back to our wonderful archaeological evidence, back to our Hod Hill site, and again back to, this is what we showed last week, right? And I'm just going to shout out to Michelle. Michelle, the tea's done. Well, if you could add the milk, and yeah. So Hod Hill, the most striking aspect of the Hod Hill site is that the so clear. It's I said this last week, is so clear. And when I'm talking about these types of sites, when I'm talking about this type of archaeology, we're just thinking, well, if we did geophysics on some other sites, we might not see any of these roundhouses at all, or many at all. But this one, there's loads of them. There's 200 that they can count so far. There's 200 that they can count so far. Some of these, as you can see in the middle of the screen, are so densely packed, are so hugely densely packed. And this indicates that the site has been occupied over a very, very long period of time. And so much going on here. This site could have just been a big settlement site at one stage, could have been a site that they used for extensive storage at one stage. The mustard's on it. There's a lot going on. So these sites themselves, some of them, some of them, and you can actually clearly see as well, and the detail is absolutely unbelievable, right? Where it's got, for example, hang on, get rid of that. Where if you, I wish I could zoom in a bit more. Hang on a minute. Let's just see if I can zoom in. That's a tiny bit more clearer, in a way. What you can clearly see is that some of these, hang on, just draw in there. There. Some of these here have loads of black patches inside them. Some have got lots of black patches inside them. My notes tell me that some of these might actually indicate pits, but some of them might actually indicate hearths. Okay, there might be hearth evidence, right? And what they've had to do, geophysics can be really, really useful in trying to interpret the evidence. So what we've got to understand this landscape of archaeology, the magnetometry itself is indicating the plan. Then you use another type of geophysics that is resistivity, right? And that might reveal the difference between, are these pits? Are they hearths? What is going on? What is going on? Are these actual ditches around them? Are they drip lines? It's unbelievable what information this is actually telling us. It's so amazing the detail that we're actually seeing. So we're getting basically we're getting high resolution, and we're getting massively high resolution. And moving on from that, and if we go to another plan, we got the overall plan there, which is absolutely fascinating, absolutely unbelievable. And what I've said as well, that they can actually tell from the geophysics, and no word of a blag here, from the geophysics, that they can actually tell which of the buildings were used for habitation and which of the buildings were used for granaries. They can see that some of the buildings are four-poster storage buildings, some of the buildings five-poster buildings, and so on and so on. So there's a lot going on. There's a lot of detail, and a lot indicated by these plans. If we go to the likes of the plan that we've got with, oh, there we go, Maiden Castle. The detail of Maiden Castle survey shows the Neolithic bank barrow, which you can clearly see go through the middle of the screen. The splits the fort interior lengthways. And what we can actually clearly see as well is not only can we see this detail, which goes all the way across the screen, we can also see this detail, which is something that had been indicated by other people recording the site. That might actually be an indication of an earlier Neolithic causewayed enclosure site. And they're starting to think that maybe at Maiden Castle, the site may have actually been divided into different zones. They may have actually, this may have been, Maiden Castle may have been, part of the site may have been for handling animals, another part may have been for storage, another part may have actually been for habitation. So these findings have been really, really interpreted, but it's a period of time that the archaeology is overlapping. Now, the potential number of dwellings inside Dorset's developed hill forts seems excessive if the enclosures originally acted only as the type of temporary refuge with which they have been traditionally associated. Now, that's something that I've not really discussed. On the contrary, overlapping buildings indicate, and if we go again back to this wonderful plan, lots of these overlapping buildings indicate occupation over a long period, which also makes it unlikely that the structures simply housed the huge workforce required to raise the ramparts in the first place. The traces, what we're seeing now, for example, with Maiden Castle and maybe Hod Hill as well, there are traces of industry, and the artifacts found in the various excavations at such sites suggest that by about the 200s, maybe 300 years BC, developed hill forts had become permanently occupied centres possibly akin to market towns with resident storage facilities and craftsmen. So this is one of the things that is absolutely fascinating when we talk about these sites. The fascinating thing that if the Romans had not invaded Britain in AD 43, right? And if most of these hadn't been abandoned, which most of them already were by AD 43, but the ones that weren't, it's likely that they were developing into some kind of market towns, residential storage facilities, places for craftsmen, metal workers, and so on. And actually, just before the break, I actually mentioned something like that. I mentioned, well, Margaret asked that question, didn't she? She basically said, well, what was going on? And I basically said, well, maybe the fort at Oswestry was for the community at Oswestry. Maybe the fort at Hod Hill was for the community of people at Hod Hill. And then when you look at something like Caliva Atrabatum, which is south west of the likes of Reading, Caliva Atrabatum, the Roman Silchester, was the site that was low-lying fairly, probably had a bank and a ditch around it, but that was developing into some kind of a town, right? Like the modern day towns that we've got akin to the county areas that we've got for administration today. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to the other view, and we mentioned this last week, and we can clearly see the Roman bit in the northwest corner, life after prehistory. And we're so close to the Roman period anyway, so I'm going to do this. So taken together, our geophysical surveys, combined with a reanalysis of earlier archaeological evidence, strongly suggests that all Dorset enclosures were entering a period of decline long before the start of the Romans coming over here in AD 43. Indigenous reoccupation of the hill fort also seems to have been very limited during the Roman period. And that's very interesting. That's a very, very interesting point. When these sites had been left and abandoned, did people actually ever go there? There's some evidence, after the AD 43, there's some evidence that people did, right? There's some evidence to say that the Romans used these sites for military purposes. When, for example, we look at Maiden Castle, for example, the Romans actually reused Maiden Castle, and they put temples there. Lots of these sites are never to see any use again until agricultural practices of the medieval period. Some see use again in the 400-500s, but for whatever reasons in the 100s towards the birth of Christ, lots of these sites become abandoned, and we can't really understand why. If it's such a warlike society, why are people abandoning the places that would have protected them? So therefore the banks and ditches must have been there for another reason. Now, that when we think of the when we think about the north western corner of Hod Hill, and you can see the Roman fort, which is there. When you can see the fort itself, you could say that this is an observe and control establishment, right? But the Romans may have just been using it for practice purposes. They must have been using it to train their troops. So when you do look at this site, as we mentioned last week, and I showed you this last week, you can clearly see for a site that was used for about 7 years, you can clearly see that the Romans, you can see there that there's a barrack and there's another barrack. There's some other barrack arrangements here. And there's more areas where you could actually interpret these are barrack areas. This is really, really interesting. The Romans saw that this landscape was a fairly safe place. They've got this whole area, and they decided to build a fort within an Iron Age site. And we see this a lot. We see that the Romans only used part of the Iron Age site. And in some ways, when you're using only part of the Iron Age site, it might indicate that the whole population around you has been quite pacified. Because if you get attacked and the banks and ditches, for example, if that's your Roman fort there, right? And if you get, say, attacked by military formations that want to attack you, they use these banks and ditches for shelter as they're attacking the fort. So that simply means that that wasn't the case. The Romans felt safe enough just to occupy this part of the site. And therefore, what we've got at Hod Hill is evidence that they were using Hod Hill as a training base. And then you can actually see the evidence of them training by the artifacts around, the military artifacts around, as indicated, as we mentioned earlier on. We mentioned something about Ambleside, and so on and so on. Whatever's happening with the likes of Ambleside, we can't always think that these sites were, for all intents and purposes, completely abandoned forever, as I've explained. In later periods, for example, what we do find when we, for example, think of this site, which is Badbury Rings, right? That's not too far away from Hambledon Hill and the likes of Hod Hill. This site itself sees usage, for example, involving the likes of the Civil War, right? And what you've got is usage there in the Second World War. Also, interestingly enough, when we look at Hambledon Hill again, right, which is the one at the end, Hambledon Hill, that's very interesting. Hambledon Hill itself sees that it comes into use in the 1600s, at the time of the English Civil War. It's said, in fact, that the Dorset clubmen rose up against the hardship being caused by the armies of both sides foraging on their land. In August 1645, a group of some 2,000 clubmen made a stand on Hambledon Hill, but were routed by no more than 50 of Cromwell's dragoons. So in other words, this place sees usage in protecting what they've got from the warring parliamentarians and the warring royalists, and a group gets together and says, right, let's go here, let's store some stuff here, let's stop it being nicked from both of these warring sides in August 1645, and they come a cropper against the Cromwellians. As you can understand, these hill fort sites are absolutely massively fascinating. And there's so much history. We'll do the Stonehenge bit in a minute. There's so much history with these sites. And there's so many of these sites in Dorset. Badbury Rings being reused later periods. The evidence at Hod Hill with it suddenly, in 1 minute it being an Iron Age site, and the next minute you've got Roman stuff going on. You can see it clearly in this image, massively clearly, the Roman stuff in the left-hand side of the image. And again, the Maiden Castle evidence and all of this stuff is so fascinating. We're learning so much more about these sites. But what we will do, we will be looking at Maiden Castle on another date. We won't be visiting Hod Hill again, but we will be naturally visiting Maiden Castle. So what we're going to do, one last thing today, we're going to look at the last story of the day, which is Stonehenge. And what we're going to do, we're going to read the Stonehenge article out. More hill forts in the future. We're going to read the Stonehenge thing out now, and then I'm going to rip it apart. Stonehenge giant altar stone, and the altar stone is actually there. Now, the clue to what I'm going to say at the end is this very point, right? The altar stone is a recumbent stone, right? It's lying flat. Hang on. It's lying flat. There it is. The altar stone is lying flat, right? It's not upright. Okay. So that altar stone itself is said to come from Scotland. And this has been freshly released. No one is certain why Stonehenge was built. This is the article. It's in alignment with the movements of the sun and the moon. It consists of an, oh, here we go. It consists of an outer ring, which is, hang on, this outer ring here, okay, consists of an outer ring of sarsen stones. And you've got these trilithon stones here. And these are all sarsen stones as well. We all know about hang on a minute. We all know about these, all these other blue stones, which are dotted around, right? We all know about the blue stones, right? And it's this thing that, for example, the blue stones themselves came from Wales, but now we're thinking that the blue stones may have come from somewhere else. But then that's another article. That was from a week previous. But the stone that we're actually interested in is, hang on a minute. Well, if we zoom in there, we're thinking that the stone that we're interested in is in fact this stone here, which somebody described as an altar stone. It's not an altar stone at all, but the name of an altar stone comes down from the architect Indigo Jones from 1620, right? Stone number 80, the altar stone. Now, it lies flat at the heart of the Stonehenge enigma, right? And it's very, very interesting. It's a grey-green sandstone, right? And it's very different from the blue stones, and it's very different from the sarsen stones, right? Sarsen stones come from Marlborough Down, which is 14 miles north, and the blue stones coming from wherever, right? Now, I want to be finished at in 5 minutes, so I'm gonna speed up. In a new paper published in Nature, it traced the altar stone source to northeast Scotland, meaning that it travelled 430 miles to Salisbury Plain over land or by water. This is an incredible distance for Neolithic times before the wheel is thought to have arrived in Britain. This stunning discovery sheds new light on the capabilities and long-range connections of Britain's Neolithic inhabitants. They do believe that it may have actually come from Orkney. Now, thinking about all of this, thinking about all the research that's been wasted in the blue stones from West Wales, I go with the thing that the blue stones from West Wales came here by glaciation. Others say they travelled overland, up the Brecon Beacons, back down again, up across loads of water, up and down, and all the rest of it, right? And the same story is said about this. The same thing is said about the altar stone, right? And what they've got is this is a fragment of a piece of the altar stone, right? And what they've analysed it is that this altar stone must have obviously come from Orkney or 430 miles north from somewhere in Scotland, right? 700 kilometers to the Salisbury Plain. Now, I thought about this, and I thought really hard about this, and I come up with the following conclusion. And this is where we end today, right? Now, that stone itself has not been lifted out the ground since it's been there, right? That stone is lying flat. It may have been upright once, but it's lying flat. It's in the ground, lying flat. It's known as a recumbent stone, right? So the point is as follows. One, how do we know that that stone was placed there at the time that this monument was being initially conceived and constructed over 4,500 years ago, or maybe longer, right? How do we know when that stone was placed there? One. And the next point is that nobody is arguing the point that it could have actually got there via glacial travel. Peter will remark that there's a stone that is on the island of Flatholm that has ended up on Flatholm and travelled, I think we're talking about 150 odd miles from North Wales, right? And it's got all the way to Flatholm, right? And that said that it got there to Flatholm via glaciation, right? Then they're saying that the stone, that this stone, the altar stone, was dragged all the way from Scotland over land, and some say it got here by a water. I'm saying that there's purely a big problem with these scientists examining how this stone is there. And they're simply misleading us every single time. It's almost as if there's so much money to be made by Stonehenge that they're coming up with anything. And they haven't come up with anything at all. And that's my take on the new stone. Well, the new stone, what they're saying about the altar stone, stone 80 at Stonehenge in the middle. And my conclusion is that it's a glacial stone that somehow ended up at Stonehenge. And we don't know when it was placed there. End of, vis-a-vis. That's the end of the lecture. Right, and we have finished smack on. We finished 1 minute early, Margaret, so you can ask us any. Oh, no, we haven't. It's too late. Bugger off. Right, Margaret, anything you want to say?
No, I'm going now.
All right, then. Okay, Margaret, was that good for you?
Yeah, very good. Thank you. Yeah.
Anyway, Margaret.
Well done, that man.
Many thanks. I'm glad you enjoyed that. We filled a lot in there. See you next week, Margaret.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Right, Margaret. Right, next to go is going to be David. Anything you want to say, David?
No, thank you very much. Thank you.
And it's been an absolute pleasure as normal. Get well soon, David. Make sure you do. Take care, David. Be safe.
Yeah.
Get well soon. Night,
Bye, David.
Night.
Bye.
Night, David. Anything from you, Andy?
No. I can't get over that Stonehenge thing. Thinking, what?
Okay, and Andy, you know I'm really critical of it. What do you think?
Yeah, I'd like to see a bit more analysis of it. I just can't believe that it's come all the way from there. No one's carried it all the way down there. That's ridiculous. Glacial, maybe. It's a long way because there's a lot of glaciers. It's not just one big glacier all the way, but it's not out of the question. I think something's gone wrong there. I don't buy that at all. It's too far-fetched.
The thing is, right? The thing is, I just, you're not talking about a couple of £1,000 used on this research. You're talking about tens of thousands of pounds, and archaeology doesn't have a lot of money in it. And I'm just thinking, what an absolute waste of resources. Every single time. It's because Stonehenge is popular and we're going to write about Stonehenge, and it's just like, nobody's saying these things about Castlereagh. You know what I mean? They're not ever saying these things about Castlereagh, and it's just thinking, why?
If it did come from Scotland, that would be pretty wild, though.
Yeah, well, I'm not disagreeing it didn't come from Scotland. I'm talking about all the angles where they're saying it did, and it just don't make sense.
Man with a lorry in the 1950s when they were rebuilding.
And that's my other point. How do we know when it got there?
Yeah,
because
I
the
think
stone.
that's a very good point. Yeah.
We need to know what's under that stone, and if it turns out that there's a bit of barbed wire under that stone, we know when it got there.
Yeah. Bit of context never goes amiss, does it?
You know, when they did that time team in West Wales and they found out that they found a sword from whatever, an Iron Age sword, and had a bit of barbed wire underneath. That's the type of evidence I need to look at.
Yeah.
Anyway, nothing else there, Andy?
No, but just hill forts amaze me.
They
We have one near us, Wharton Crag, that is only really thanks to LiDAR been recognised as a hill fort, because it's so grown over and it's a protected site now, so you can't do any excavations. But it's they're stone piled ramparts, no ditches because it's on solid rock. It'd be really interesting. I thought, oh, it's a shame we can't kind of do any study on the inside of that and see what might or might not be around on the inside of that.
That's right. I agree. I think I've seen the outline of that as well. Yeah. Is that the one that's you can pass in the car?
No, you can't see it. You can't see it really without the GPS unless you know exactly what you're looking for.
No, I think I'll pass something else. Yeah.
There's one or two knocking around here, but that one's a very strange one. It's a classic site, promontory, over commanding views everywhere. But,
True.
But who lives there or not? That's the case.
Exactly. So the Maiden Castle one we'll make a little bit more sense of that when we do it. So that'll be good.
That's an astonishing site. I'd love to go there sometime. It's just so big. The problem is when you go to sites like that, you can't take them in on the ground because you can't see it.
No.
You need an aerial view.
Don't take any family members with you either. I gotta go now, Dad. Sorry, Dad. You've been here for 8 hours. I remember I got a good friend in London called Karen, and she said, "Oh, what you coming over to see the Hadrian exhibition?" And I did, right. And she had a little boy in the pram, and it was just like, right. She calls me James, and it's like, look, James, right, we've been here for an hour and a half looking at Emperor Hadrian's earlobes. It's really fascinating, right? But I've got to get my boy home. And it was like, right, okay, sorry, Karen.
And so when we go down to Bournemouth, I'm thinking, I know there's a lot of stuff around here, but nobody really wants to go and look at them except me.
Well, if you drive in a little bit more distance, you could get down to Kent's Cavern, but that's a little bit more of a distance to go. But
well, we were at Hengist Head the other day. Well, not this time, actually, the last time round, but it was absolutely rammed, the car park, so we couldn't stay. So and didn't have enough. It's a bit of a shame because you can park near it, but it's a good 1.5 miles from the car park, and you've got to walk that, and we didn't have enough time to do it anyway. So.
Need a good couple of good 3 hours. Roger said he's going there, so that's good. Okay. Anything else, Andy?
No, thank you.
Okay, cool. Adrina, hopefully you've managed to get the card off to David.
No, because I haven't got his address.
I sent you his address.
Did you?
I even went on the archive to get his address for you. I sent it over by email. I did it the time that you contacted me.
I haven't got it. Unless, I'll check. I was going to ask.
It's here. You've got it. Yeah, go on then.
No.
Go on.
I don't think. Oh, yeah. If the stones are carried by glaciation, won't there be a lot more of the same type of stone lying around in the area?
Actually, the point is the reverse. No, they're nuggets of stones. Remember, Britain's a big place when it comes to different types of rock, and it may have just been a stone that stood out, and that's why they wanted to use it. It makes complete sense. Yeah, it's an old brownie whatever stone. We'll use that one. And it looks different from the rest. We'll chuck it in.
Yeah.
It's not the only stone. One of the blue stones that didn't turn out to be a blue stone come from somewhere else recently, and that was another one. So,
is that a replacement? Yeah, I've got one here. You can have it cheap. You know.
It's like an MSc job placement scheme, isn't it?
Do you know that probably went on then just the same as it does now? So
yeah, I got a stone. It's grey. No, I want a brown one.
Yeah, why not?
Don't have racism here.
Oh,
Exactly.
Brown, yeah. Brown ones are in this year. Brown's the colour. Yeah.
Brown's a new black.
Yeah.
You can have any colour car as long as it's grey. When you think about it, these people who talk about blue stones and all the rest of it, they're mainly all grey anyway.
Yeah.
Unless you go to West Wales and can actually get greenstone. Well, that's something else. That would be really good. A greenstone. That's what they haven't got, Andy.
No.
They want a greenstone.
Yeah, I've got some Lakeland slate that's that colour.
We got some greenstone in down by me as well. Roofs, but it's bloody expensive. You have one of those slates on your roof, you're talking about 30 quid a pad. So right, anything else from Drina or Andy? I've just sent you David's address again.
Will you send it again, because I haven't got it.
I've just done it again.
Thank you.
It's going to your junk mail.
You reckon?
Have you got the right email address, Carl?
Yeah, it's the same email address that Drina emailed me to email her the address that she wanted me to email.
So you replied to it, right? Got you. Yeah.
So
have you got it now, Drina?
No.
Have you got?
No.
Right. Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to stop this recording. I'll read it out to you on screen. So you stay there. Andy can take a note of this as well. I'll end the recording formally. So everybody watching on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe. Please press the join button. Really appreciate your support. Anyone else who wants to say anything, do it in the chat box. I will continue, but I've got to come off a line because I've got to say something in confidence. So many thanks for watching us on YouTube and for your subscribing support on YouTube as well. Thank you very much.